The following is a presentation of the Belly Up Sports Media Network.
All right, well, we're going to run right ahead into our second guest of the week, a returning guest to the show here, our friend Kevin Wilson from Belly Up Fantasy. Kevin, how's it going? It's been a minute. How are you?
It's been a few minutes. Yeah, it's going great. We're a week into the baseball season, and I'm super jazzed. College basketball's over. The playoffs, NBA, and all that hasn't started yet. So baseball's got the spotlight. So I'm very excited about baseball and what we've seen so far.
So, real quick, would you mind explaining what you do?
Well, I'm one of the senior writers for the Belly Up Fantasy side of things. I cover whatever season that happens to be going on. Baseball is my passion. It always has been. And so Vince Stover and I have a baseball show that we do every Sunday night at 7:00 our time. And I am also a co-host of the Belly Up Fantasy Live football show that comes on Sunday mornings at 10 a.m. our time. And right now I am writing it once a week about a subject of fantasy baseball. I've been doing that for the past couple of months or so. And so I drop an article every week. And if anyone is in the fantasy baseball, and if you're watching this show, you certainly are that, you need to get over to the Belly Up Fantasy website. There are tons of fantasy baseball content over there. We have some new people that are involved in fantasy baseball, so I'm very excited about what's going on Belly Up as far as fantasy baseball is concerned.
Certainly. Let's go ahead and jump on in here. Honestly, there still probably are plenty of drafts ongoing through this first week, and we're just getting out of the real core of fantasy baseball draft season. From what you saw based on average draft position, who were some guys you liked, thought went a little high, thought went a little low? What did you see?
Well, one of the guys that I thought was going very high, and that is a guy that, because I'm in Texas here, and Jacob deGrom was going, his ADP was in the second round, and that's in fact what happened in our draft. And he pitched very well yesterday, but still, when it comes to health and him, it hasn't been there. And so there was zero chance I was taking him in the second round. And another guy, a pitcher, Justin Verlander, I knew that he was not going to match what he did a year ago. And in fact, didn't even get to the season because he's on the injured list right now. And he was going even earlier than deGrom at the beginning of the second round. And I was no chance I was going to do that. I was number 7 in our draft, which meant that I was going back in the second round top. And I was not going to have anything to do with Justin Verlander. And so I hope it works out for Jacob deGrom. When he's right, he's the best pitcher on the planet, but you just can't depend on that. So either one of those two guys, I had no interest of drafting. Another guy that I had no interest of getting in my hold was Fernando Tatis. And we all know about him. And he is, in fact, I guess it's, what is it, El Paso or somewhere?
El Paso, yeah.
Is it El Paso? Okay.
Yeah.
And so he's getting ready to make his debut 20 games into the season, but he hasn't played all of last year. We know about everything that happened with him. And so he went in the 4th round in our draft, and that was not happening here because he's a wonderful talent and everything else, but no for me. Let's see. And a guy that looks like I might have been dead wrong about was Dylan Cease. I thought, well, I had him a year ago and I was very pleased to have him a year ago. and he was a value a year ago. But he was going too high in the draft to me. He's come out blazing this, and so he might prove me wrong. But I wasn't going to go there because his walks scare me. In fact, he had 5, and it didn't burn him. But still, Dylan Cease is not a guy that I was interested in having 2 years in a row. And another guy that went in the 7th round, Josh Bell, first baseman of the Cleveland Guardians. I wasn't doing that either. So those are some of the guys that I thought were way overvalued. So some of the guys that I thought their ADPs were too low. First was Spencer Strider, and he pitched today. And what I saw, he left leading 4-3, but now it's 4-4, so he won't get a win.
6-4 really... San Diego now. They are falling apart. Yeah, they are falling apart. Atlanta, this is not good.
So, that's surprising because Atlanta's off to a good start. They're a great ball club. And so, but anyway, Spencer Strider, he was striking out everybody a year ago. He had like the highest strikeout rate they've ever seen for a rookie. And so I've got him in the 4th round. And so that is huge value to me. So I would take him in the 4th every single time, whatever comes down the road. Let's see a couple guys, Tampa, they're off to a 6-0 start, but you would expect that because they play Detroit and they play Washington and they play Oakland. But even so, 2 guys, Drew Rasmussen went in the 15th round, and he only pitched 2-hitter, 6 innings, 2 hits, no runs. So that's off to a great start. And his counterpart, Jeffrey Springs, went in the 18th round, and all he did was pitch 6 innings, allowed no run. So those are 2 guys. And one that I still to this day don't understand why people weren't up on him a little bit higher, Luis Arias, the defending American League batting champion. Of course, he's in Miami now, and he's first base and second base qualified. Second base is a wasteland once you get past the first 5 or 6 guys, especially with Altuve out. And so he's off to a good start, and he went to me in the 8th round. I think that's solid value there. So those are just some of the guys that I thought were undervalued. And one other dude was Paul Goldschmidt. And all he is a defending, nationally most valuable player. He was at the top of my first base rankings, but was only like the 4th guy ranked first base. I thought that's insane. And I was trying to get him in the 3rd round and did not. So somebody must have saw what I was talking about or something, then they snagged him out from underneath me. So if you got Paul Goldschmidt in the 3rd, that's excellent value.
Now, bringing things back to the Fernando Tatis conversation, because so much of the issues with him are, personal issues, playing a little too reckless, acting a little too recklessly. How much do off the field and personal antics affect your fantasy thoughts?
Well, with him, it affects it a lot because first of all, you had the motorcycle thing. That's a personal situation. Then he was doing, the steroids and all that. And so that's a personal issue. And just, the way that he swings the bat, I know it he hits the ball, he's hitting it a mile, but he swings that bat so hard, he even hurt himself. Not this past year, but the year before that, he swung and actually hurt himself. And so there's a lot of downside when it comes to that guy. And I know he's playing in a loaded San Diego lineup, and he's going to have outfield as well as shortstop, which gives him additional value, but not enough to me to warrant picking him and let him sit on your bench for 20 games.
And you also brought up the limited options there in the second base market.
Yes.
If you were to go, obviously in those situations, you want to go grab one of those few guys that's out there. But if you missed out on those guys, who would you have been looking for?
Well, other than as I mentioned, Arias. Let's see, who do I have here? Here's one guy for you, the second baseman for the Cardinals, Nolan Gorman. I'm sorry. All right. And he's a guy that you could go out, you might be able to pick him up off your waiver wire right now. And this is all he's done. Yeah, he's at 25% owned, and all he's done so far is hit 438 and has a hit in every game. So if you can get a guy like that to shore up your second base, you're doing great. And so that's the guy that I lean to right now to go out and get. I did pick up, since I missed out on Paul Goldschmidt, I got Marcus Semien of the Rangers in the third, and he's kind of off to a little slow start, but not nearly as slow as last year. If you remember, he didn't hit his first home run until the end of May. So to get him in the third, I thought was great.
I've kind of got two questions tied into one here for you. First, what did you learn from fantasy baseball last season that will help you heading into this season? And I guess also that has to do with how will the new rules, such as the pitch clock and that kind of stuff, affect fantasy baseball, if at all?
Well, you can't say if at all, because it is obviously having an effect already. And because if you look at the stolen bases, right? Opening day saw the most stolen bases since 1907. So most of our great grandfathers probably weren't even alive then in 1907. So, and then I don't have any illusions that we're going back to the Ricky Henderson days of 100 steals or anything else like that. But the stolen bases are up way. The success rate is way higher than it's been. I wrote that down. Anyways, it's over 90%. And it was at 67 or so percent a year ago. So the stolen bases are way up. The amount that they can throw over to first base is limited, so that definitely helps. The bigger bases, I think, definitely helps. And you can't shift everybody to the second base side of the bag. Definitely helps. They can't put a guy in short right field. Definitely helps. And so if you have guys that are lefty swingers, even though the average is up a little bit, it's not nearly as high as I thought maybe going into the season it would be, but it's still early. But it is up. So if you're a guy like Corey Seager, who lost more hits to the defensive shift over the last 2 years than any other player, you're probably, still dreaming happy dreams about that. And so I think there's going to be, if you're in offense, pitching, maybe not so much. But offense, I think you're in good shape in fantasy baseball, especially if you're in a Cats league and you have to put some stolen bases somewhere. That's going to be a help to you. And as far, what did I learn? Well, I'm a little impulsive, impatient, I guess you could say. So if a guy is not performing in the past, I would just flush him and get somebody else. So, and I got a question about Sean Murphy, the Atlanta Braves catcher, who's off to a pretty terrible start, but he's Sean Murphy. So if you have him, somebody was asking, should I drop him? No, you should not drop him, because he's going to get it together. So if you have players that are stars, have a little patience. And that was also a question I got, was how much leash do you give a pitcher that pitches poorly? Well, that depends on the pitcher. And so if he's at the bottom of your, like Michael Kopech of the White Sox, I was pretty high on, but he got drilled in his first start. And I thought, well, I'll just hold on to him. But then I needed some bench space, so I went ahead and cut him. But I think that you need to have a little patience with some of these guys and see how things are going to work out. that might help you out season long, to have a season long look at your fantasy team instead of just this week or next week.
I'm going to go ahead. I'll take the next question, but before I jump into that, let's just make a quick reminder here for everybody in our YouTube audience. If you have any questions for Kevin, go ahead and drop them in the chat. Go ahead and put that comment in, and we'll get to them pretty soon. But talking about how much of a leash do you give a guy, Anthony Rendon? I'm going to preface with.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm going to preface with I already cut him. But
Okay.
between the suspension issues, the off the field antic type situation, and already having a knee injury, how much leash do you give a guy who really hasn't been a star in several years?
I would give that guy 0 leash, because ever since he's left Washington, he has been a bust of massive proportions. And in the past, because he was hurt, so I guess you can't blame that on him. But that's a track record that's going back a couple of years now. Then you add in the fact that he's grabbing fans while he's walking to the clubhouse. No, you can't have that. I'm not having it. I would have not drafted him with my last draft pick, let alone anything else. So if you've got him, you cut him to the curb right now.
All right. And then another interesting thought I had, maybe really more towards the fantasy strategy side of things. A lot of these leagues now, I'd say a typical size would be 10 or 12 pitchers to be on your roster. How many of those spots are you streaming for starts between 2-start pitchers and rotated guys through?
Well, I've got on my roster, I've got 12 pitcher, I believe. And so those are some of the guys that I might be like Michael Kopech, like I mentioned, that I could cut him and bring in some guys. And that's one of the things that you need to be aware of, is who is coming up to have a 2-start week. And so not only that, but who are they facing? And so there's some guys, we might get into this a little bit later, I guess, but there are some pitchers coming up next week who have 2 starts. And some of those guys I really like. So that's one of the things that there's places that will tell you, if you check it out, like Fantasy Pros or somewhere, that because I get an email from them every once in a while that says, these are the 2-starter guys coming up. And so pay attention to that. And because you can make one move, and if you're in a league that has unlimited moves like I am, then you could make one move and get yourself pretty much 2 starting pitchers in one. So that's the kind of thing that I like. I like those streamers do have a place in fantasy baseball. You just have to be aware, like in our league, there's a starters limit, that if you reach that limit before the end of the scoring period, you will get no more starters. So be aware of that, because I learned that lesson the hard way when I first started, because nobody told me how to play fantasy baseball. I learned it on the fly. And there was one week where I'm sitting there and I'm like, hey, wait, I can't use a starter. What's going on here? And it was all red, and it was real angry looking. So don't let that happen to you. I think that most leagues, if not all, have a starters limit that you can use. So just be aware of that limit and don't exceed it. Otherwise, no starters for you.
And this is kind of an interesting topic, and we're kind of just going a little bit all over the place here. But for the people who maybe necessarily haven't tried fantasy baseball yet, looking to get into it, what are some other, early things you wish you'd learned before you gotten into?
Well, for me, one of the things because when I first did my first draft, there were relief pitchers all over the place. And on my fantasy team, relief pitchers really have no place on my roster, because I know there's an upside that they can pitch more than once a week and all that, but you don't know when they're going to pitch. And then when they do pitch, let's say you got a guy comes in and it's 3-2, and he gives up a walk to the first guy, and then the next dude hits a home run. Not only is you lose, that's -5 points, then you get a -5 points because he blew the save. Then you get negative points because of the hits and negative points because of the runs. Next thing you know, you're down 14 points. That's pretty hard to come back from. So typically I will have just one guy maybe on a relief pitcher on the roster. And that started off really well for me last year because I took Josh Hader. And that was gangbusters until things fell completely apart. So, so that's what I've learned. Other people might argue that point, but relief pitchers I really don't have a use for.
It's funny you mentioned that. Overall, actually, this is a good question. What's been your favorite operating system to use between like the ESPNs, the CBSs of the world? What's been your favorite to run with?
I like ESPN, and there's a lot of people that don't like it, but to me it's easy to use, and it tells you who your starters are. It tells you, sometimes it's irritating, but it's nice to get it says that so and so is starting in your starting lineup, but is not starting today. So that's kind of nice to know, especially games that start at 12 my time. Yeah. So it gives you tidbits like that, so you can possibly make moves, because once the game starts, you're locked. And so and last year, one of the things I liked about ESPN, because I had the first pick in the draft, and that has to do with Shohei Ohtani. And at ESPN, Shohei Ohtani is one player. And Yahoo, he is two separate players that you would have to have 2 roster spots to have him. And so that makes no sense to me whatsoever. And so in any league that he's one player, he is the first pick in the draft. And if you suggest otherwise, then we'll have a discussion about that, because Aaron Judge was awesome last year, but Shohei Ohtani beat him by 300 fantasy points last year. So that's one of the huge differences between like ESPN and Yahoo that I have seen. I haven't really messed with CBS Sleeper. I have messed with that a little bit, but ESPN to me is the best one.
Yeah, you don't want to bother with CBS. I unfortunately have my league over there, and you reminded me of this story with the relief pitchers situation, because last year, as my first year in this league, I hadn't noticed in the rules that it didn't have points for holds, and in the draft settings shows like 7 spots for relief pitchers. Apparently, you have an infinite amount of pitchers you can draft, but that's starting and relief, but it showed like 10 spots for starting pitchers and 10 spots for relievers. Next thing you know, I'm 5 relievers into drafting when I find out that I did not have to fill half those spots. Right. So it's certainly not the best operating system. You bring up Aaron Judge, though, yes, in that Shohei Ohtani conversation. Is that a guy you think that can hold up in the fantasy conversation for a second year after the great time he had?
Well, there's 0 chance he's going to hit 62 home runs. But if he gives you 40 or 45, something like that, that's a lot. Yeah. And he's left those injuries, that he had earlier in his career. He's played 2 full seasons in a row now. And he hits in New York. He's got an excellent lineup around him. So, Aaron Judge is a guy that I would have taken at number 7, but he went the pick before me, so I didn't get him. And I think every chance that he's going to have a great year, but he can't. That's one of those years where it's a generational season, and so he's not going to come close to those numbers ever again.
Brandon, do you have anything else here for Kevin?
Yeah, I think one more question, and it's a little less on the fantasy baseball side and more just general MLB fandom. Take us through your favorite team. Here's what I'll do. Your favorite team, a bold prediction about your team or just any player that you have, and then World Series pick. How about that?
All right. So my favorite team will become very obvious because that is the Dodgers. Even though I'm in Texas, I've been a Dodgers fan since I was in high school. So even though I've been around the country, I've been to a lot of baseball games all over the country, but Dodgers is the team I go back to. And I don't know how hot this prediction might be, but the Dodgers, I think, are in real danger of not winning their division this year. And that is, I know they didn't win it 2 years ago, but the Giants had to win 107 games to stop that. So they've won 8 of the last 9 divisions. But San Diego, I know they're the little red-headed stepchild, in the past to the Dodgers, but they beat them a year ago, and it seems like they signed every player under the sun. So if they play up to their potential, I think the Padres win the division. The Dodgers certainly can. They'll make the playoffs. There's no question about that. And so a home player that I like this year is Noah Syndergaard. And I think that he's back to throwing, the Thor's hammer out there. And so I think he's up for a big year. And so I'm interested to see what's going to happen. And I'm glad that they've got rid of some of the like Turner is in Boston, and he was going the wrong direction. And so they needed to do some purging. They really didn't sign anybody this year. JD Martinez does not move the needle for me, even though, because he's only a DH. And I'm in a league that does have a DH slot, which I think, because every team has one now, so every league should have a DH slot, but still that limits where you can put, a guy, if that's all he does is DH. Something like Nelson Cruz, he's on his last leg, so players like that don't have a real need on a fantasy team to me. So they're getting themselves younger, and a bold prediction, I think that they are going to throw everything they can to the Angels' direction to get Shohei Ohtani. If they don't do it before the trade deadline, they're going to do it next offseason.
Certainly one of the few teams that's properly equipped to get him and pay him.
If they can pay him, they've got the prospects. But that's one of the things that's overlooked about the Dodgers. Everybody said, oh, they spend all this money, which they do. But they've got an excellent farm system underneath all of that. So they can give them some prospects. They can give them, pretty much, just tell us what you want. You just, you're not going to get Dodger Stadium, but just about anything else we can talk about.
That's fantastic. All right, before we wrap up here, Kevin, would you mind plugging yourself one more time? Where can we find you?
Well, you can always find me on Twitter at KWILSEA. That's my Twitter handle, and I adopted that because I'm a Seahawk fan, and so I thought Will See was kind of interesting, and I will see, so I adopted that. And if you get to the Belly Up Fantasy website, you can find my stories all over the place over there. As we did our draft, it was live on TV, and then I wrote an article that reviewed the picks and what I thought about that. Then I wrote another article about a post-draft pickups, and so. Like I said, there's all kinds of articles from me on the Belly Up Fantasy side. And as I said, that if you're into football, you can, at 10 a.m. Sunday morning, the Belly Up Fantasy Live football show is on. It's on Twitter, it's on YouTube and all that. And then at 7 o'clock Sunday nights, Vince Stover and I do the Sports Stove Baseball Fantasy Show. So just get over to the Belly Up Fantasy. You'll find me. Just look. You'll see me over there.
All right, fantastic. Kevin, thank you so much for coming on with us tonight. You have a great evening, and
You do
hope
the
to
same.
see you soon.
Yep, just call me up or whatever, and I'll be on.
Awesome.
Thank you.
You have a
All
great
right.
time. Bye.
Thank you.
Huge thank you to our buddy Kevin Wilson. Honestly, just a great conversation and a great member of the Belly Up family every single time we've had him on.
Absolutely. Yeah. Always love having him on, and provides a fantasy baseball insight that certainly I couldn't provide.